Amy Armstrong, I'm the director for the Resilient Reefs Initiative at the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. It's a new initiative that was launched last year at our oceans in Bali, and so many of you may not have heard of it, and I'm excited to share the work that we're doing and get your feedback. We've got two objectives. I'm going to do the first one, kind of give a sense of the origin of the initiative, how we partner with sites, including some of the tools that we use, and some of our early learnings and challenges. Then I turn it over to Joel Johnson, who is the Chief Resilience Officer for Ningaloo Coast, to share with you from a practitioner perspective how it's playing out on the ground. So the origin of the initiative really is the UNESCO Marine Managers Conference in the Galapagos Islands in 2016. At that time, GBR was the only site of the 40-odd sites there that had a climate resilience assessment and a plan. And there was a clear call to action from those managers saying, we're overwhelmed, the uncertainty is great, the impacts are severe, and we need support in understanding how to manage climate effects better. The Great Barrier Reef Foundation and UNESCO took that call to action very seriously, looked around the world for global best practices of resilience planning. Found some work in the Rockefeller Foundation, which is where I come into the picture, that had been doing work with cities around the world, looking at resilience planning for urban systems, how the social, economic, and environmental pressures of an urban system can be managed better. They found an amazing partner in the BHP Foundation and developed a program that took aspects of that urban resilience planning from the Rockefeller Foundation with the, UNESCO sites, and here we are in our first year of piloting this great program. As Roger said, we're working in 5 World Heritage sites. The core of what we do is really trying to apply what Lizzie and folks have said earlier, right? Is to look at the integration between the resilience of communities and the ecosystem and not see them as separately, but really building resilience holistically between the two. We build the capacity of sites to manage climate change and local stressors better with an eye toward taking action. And I'll talk more about that, but we have $5 million set aside to support the implementation of actions on the ground that hopefully will not only have an impact on our 5 sites, but able to scale more broadly to sites around the world. I don't think we're allowed to do a presentation up here and not have a definition of resilience of some kind, so I followed suit. For us, we've really embraced the definition of RBM that Lizzie shared in our definition of resilience. So for us, it's not just the ecosystem resilience, but it's the whole system resilience. So the capacity of ecosystems, individuals, businesses, and communities that depend on them to survive, adapt, and recover. So really coming from the starting place of coral reefs are essential for the planet, not just because they house 25% of marine life, but because of the billion people who depend on them for storm protection, for livelihoods, for protein, for other things. And working with that suite of entities to help them survive, adapt, and recover depending on the stresses and shocks that they experience. So those terms have also been used this morning, but we think about shocks in terms of the acute impact, the cyclone, the bleaching event, and stresses, the longer chronic issues of coastal development that impact water quality and other things. The 5 sites where we work all have been selected by the UN because they are phenomenal examples of natural beauty and of biodiversity and of cultural heritage. We are in Belize, Palau, New Caledonia, Ningaloo Coast, and the GBR. And given this is such a new initiative, each of those sites is at a different point in implementation as well. With each of those sites, we provide a suite of services and support. The first is creating and funding a new resilience lead, so a chief resilience officer, whose job it is to lead a comprehensive resilience strategy, to catalyze new conversations with local stakeholders, do a lot of that engagement that both Eric and Lizzie have mentioned that's critical to this work, and to be an ambassador globally as well as locally. So in the room we have our first 2 chief resilience officers for the program, Joel Johnson, who you'll hear from in a moment, and Pierre Bouvet, who from New Caledonia. It is his 3rd week on the job, so he has all of the answers to resilience challenges. Feel free to talk with him at the break. So as I said, one of the CRO's main jobs is the development of a holistic resilience strategy. And I'll go into that in a little more detail, so I won't say much now, but In terms of support, we actually have a delivery partner, AECOM, that's done resilience and sustainability planning globally, and they send a team of technical support and consultant support to each of our sites to support them in that strategy development, as well as access to a global suite of partners. We do a lot of capacity building, trainings, exchanges. Yesterday, I locked all of us in a room for a day and did a lot of skill building and sharing learnings on the challenges in our sites. We do have a global knowledge network, which includes the Nature Conservancy's Reef Resilience Network. Kristen's been a phenomenal partner, as well as UNESCO, World Heritage Marine Program, and I think Fanny is not in the room right now. We also work with a number of grantees of the Rockefeller Foundation who do resilient project design. So there's a Center for Resilient Cities and Landscapes at Columbia University that supports our sites in resilience project design. Lastly, and I mentioned initially, we have set aside $5 million to support the solutions that come out of the resilience strategy process to make sure that they get implemented quickly. We're all responding to a very urgent threat here, and having some funding to keep momentum going and not have a planning cliff is really essential to our work. So what is a resilience strategy for us? One of the core principles of the program is that it's intended to have local impact and relevance with global reach. So we've designed a pretty flexible process that has some common tenets across it, but will be customized based on the local needs and challenges. One of the things that we've endeavored to do is make sure that all of the strategies, regardless of what they end up looking like, uphold a set of principles that I think also respond to some of the themes that we've heard already. So first and foremost, that they reflect the holistic reef resilience. So they're looking at threats not just to the ecosystem, but also to community and governance. That they are explicitly based on deep, broad, representative, inclusive stakeholder engagement. That's fundamental to our work, and not just stakeholder engagement, but also traditional owner engagement is a big part of our work. That they are accessible. So as a non-scientist, I will admit to some of these presentations not having been very accessible to non-science audiences. And we really want to carry that message of hope that we've talked about and engage with community. So we're hoping that these products are accessible to a range of stakeholders. That they demonstrate commitment, so not just from the reef management authorities with whom we work, but from a range of organizations on the ground who have skin in the game and commitment to implementation. And then obviously that there's a clear plan for action. So I had the benefit of reading a draft of Lizzie's paper on the plane over, and I thought, what a perfect tee up to the work that we're doing, because the definition of resilience-based management and the insights from that assessment of assessments, I think, really speak to some of the fundamental design of our program. So we are taking the charge to build social adaptive capacity, both in the community and in the governance regime, very seriously, and you'll see that in just a moment. And we also understand that those barriers to using resilience assessments to influence management are ones that we want to tackle early on. So Lizzie mentioned lack of political or community will, lack of integration to a management framework, poor stakeholder engagement, ineffective communication. Those are all things that you'll see are integral to our strategy process and how we work with community. The process itself is intended to be 9 months. That's ambitious, but we're an ambitious bunch. It starts with, again, stakeholder engagement's fundamental, developing a broad-based steering committee that has credibility and legitimacy around from a variety of stakeholders, and that will be a governance body for the work throughout. Broad-based stakeholder engagement. We have it early in the process, but it continues throughout, as you would expect. A resilience assessment, which looks different than the resilience assessments that Eric just shared, and so the next couple slides will go into that more, but a less scientific and more stakeholder-driven assessment of how ecosystem health, community well-being, and the robustness and effectiveness of governance interact, and how a community can tackle that holistically. After that amazing resilience assessment process, communities pick their challenges, get support from global experts on resilience project design, and begin implementing as quickly as possible. So yeah, this is our version of a resilience assessment. It's a reef community assessment. It's asking, what's the relationship between the community and the ecosystem and the community well-being? How effective is our governance arrangements, rules and regulations, transparency, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of the ecosystem and how they interact with those other parts of the system. The process for exploring that is a combination of desktop research, making sure that we're building on all the amazing scientific research that's been done, management reports that already exist, and then as well as deep stakeholder participation and engagement in their own experience with the system. The process of this assessment for us is just as important as the output. It may not result in a shiny PDF. It may be a series of community conversations around what do we know about the intersection of community governance and ecosystem. But it will result in some common sense of where are we strong and where are we weak across those. So again, building on the amazing work that many people in the room have done on the ecosystem dimension, we're also asking communities to take stock of what does social cohesion look like? What's the health of your community? Are livelihoods threatened by the deterioration of the ecosystem? And is governance seen as a benefit or not? What are people's accessibility to rules and regulations? How accountable and equitable are governance systems? We ask communities to think through all of those questions. Then there's a magic black box where we take the results of that assessment and help communities prioritize. So this is a hypothetical example but one I'm sure you all can think of a community around the world where you might have seen such a thing. A variety of stresses are affecting this community, from lack of livelihood opportunities, declining sea turtle population, and poor condition of seagrass beds. There's an occasional exogenous shock of a foreign fishing vessel coming in, paying locals to dredge for octopus for the degrading seagrass bed health. There's a lot of assets and systems here that are affected and are interacting with those shocks and stresses, and then the community articulates a holistic challenge, right? So community livelihoods rely on fishing and tourism activities related to sea turtles. Livelihoods are being put under pressure due to lower catches, lack of livelihood opportunity, and there's an interest for the community to collaborate more in both the sustainable fishing practices as well as diverse opportunities for income generation and self-sufficiency. We then work with the sites, bringing global experts and local knowledge to identify solutions that we can take action to begin to solve those resilience challenges. To do that will take a lot of amazing people, so I tried to put up some of the amazing people who are a part of this initiative so far. Again, as I said, we don't have a predetermined funding portfolio. We're not saying you got to come up with a water quality initiative and a livelihood initiative and a mangrove initiative, but we really want to be responsive to local priorities. So the solutions will look different. We do expect that they will require coordination outside of typical management authorities. And we've got some seed funding that we hope to be able to leverage through other partnerships to make sure that sites are implementing initiatives as they come up. And then through our Knowledge Network partners, hoping to share those solutions and initiatives with other reef communities globally. In the spirit of transparency and being part of a new initiative, some of our early challenges, partnering with, outside of your immediate jurisdictional authority is hard. That was hard when I worked with cities around the world. Planning departments don't talk to the trash department, and they should. And the same is true in this context. Identifying and accessing the right amount of data to actually inform management decisions is a challenge, and I know that's one that Joel will talk more about from the Ningaloo perspective. Proposing another strategic planning process can fall really flat in many communities that have just done a strategic planning process or have a really robust management plan. And so finding ways to augment existing planning with this holistic perspective without replicating or creating stakeholder fatigue is also going to be a challenge. Doing this in 9 months, another challenge, but again, we're facing an urgent threat, and the goal here is to leverage existing work that's been done, engage stakeholders in a new way, and rapidly move to action, not reinvent the wheel and have a new thesis on the site. And then really, really importantly, we are focused on the ground action, but we're also focused on process and governance. And I think one of the big challenges that Joel and Pierre will face is how do you use this thinking and this analysis to inform management decisions longer term and make sure it's not just a one-off strategy that gets dusty in a couple years. So those are a lot of challenges, but I want to end on the reason that we're still persevering despite those challenges is we think that we can have a really significant impact. And this is our theory of change. I won't go through it in detail, but just to underscore the change pathways that we're focused on, and we really believe that by building the capacity of reef managers and other local agents of change, that we can institutionalize resilience planning. We really believe that empowering and equipping local communities to take action is central to all of this work. We believe that implementing solutions that have a measurable impact on reef and communities is essential, and we really want to be sharing this knowledge and these solutions with a global network of leaders. And if we deliver on those pathways, we hope that the world's most enigmatic coral reefs are managed to maintain biodiversity, ecosystem function, and that social value that we've talked about already. With that, I'll let Joel tell you how it's actually working on the ground.